Hey guys, my name is Alfie Evans, and today I'm going to be reacting to Sentencing Dreamworks Villains for Their Crimes Part 4 by Wickedbinge. Now, I've reacted to the first 3 sentencing videos. If you guys want to go watch them first, please do so, otherwise this video might not make any sense. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Dreamworks is a renowned animation studio that has created some of the most iconic animated films of all time. While their films captured the hearts of audiences worldwide, their villains have also made a lasting impression with their heinous deeds. From terrorizing villages to attempting world domination, Dreamworks villains are guilty of all sorts of atrocities. And today, once again, we're dragging them into our courtroom to answer for their crimes. I'm Kyle with Wickedbinge, and today we're sentencing more Dreamworks villains for their crimes. Court is in session. As of now, we've done 3 videos on the topic of sentencing Dreamworks villains. And technically, while this video is being released as the 4th in the series, it actually bridges the gap in between our 2nd and 3rd, because the movies we'll be tackling today are Madagascar, Wallace and Gromit, Curse of the Were-Rabbit, Over the Hedge, and Flushed Away. So let's get started with a movie that you either love to hate or hate love, Madagascar. Starting off this list is a recurring nightmare for the animal crew. We have Madagascar series, and then future projects as well. During the first film, her role is a pretty small one, but still certainly notable. Nana commits both assault and animal abuse by attacking a very innocent Alex with her slipper. Sure, there's no real damage done, but the intentions are there. That is, of course, until she hits Melvin with a handbag and kicks Alex in the family jewels. Bad kitty! So we're sentencing Nana to 6 months of community service at an animal shelter, where hopefully she can learn to have a bit of empathy for animals. The only other villain on our Madagascar docket are the Fusa. The Fusa are a group of predatory animals that exist on the island of Madagascar. They're shown to be totally animalistic in their behavior, and care very little for anything beyond eating. They spend most of their time on screen stalking and attempting to murder the main cast, mostly to eat, but even then it still comes off as messed up. Certainly we can all agree that they need to eat, though with every animal being shown to be well aware mentally, it is still a hard pill to swallow. But it is the circle of life. The only other major crime they could be on the hook for, I suppose, is inciting terror in the group, in such a way that one could refer to it as terrorism. However, due to the lack of any major motive, since, once again, they just want to eat, it's a bit difficult to accurately use that term. The Fusa care very little for anything save for their own sustenance, but this is a tough one because they are just animals trying to survive. So we can't, in good faith, sentence them to anything. That said, if the circle of life wants to deal with them in any sort of natural way, we won't stand in its way. One of the lesser-known films we'll be tackling today is one in a series of mostly non-Dreamworks content, Wallace and Gromit, Curse of the Were-Rabbit. Up first for this film is Philip. Philip is a bull terrier and the pet dog of Victor Quartermain, where he acts mostly as Gromit's rival. He appears alongside Victor so they can hunt down the Were-Rabbit despite not knowing who the Were-Rabbit is. He spends most of the film aiding and abetting Victor's many crimes throughout. Philip does assault Gromit after the latter managed to escape from the unlawful imprisonment that Victor puts them through. He then also assists in the attempted murder of Wallace, and while he doesn't do much, he still certainly is on the hook, because it seems he is just as conscious as Gromit, so he should be punished. Due to most of his crimes being just him as second fiddle, we're only going to give him 1 year in prison with a chance of parole. The only other criminal on this particular docket is Victor Quartermain. Victor is a hunter and a rival to Wallace. He spends most of the film hunting down the Were-Rabbit without a license, which would be considered poaching. He attempts to murder Wallace and unlawfully imprisons Gromit, and although he escapes, that doesn't change the mass intention. He harasses Lady Toddington despite her constant rejections, and continues to pursue her, which also isn't a good look. He commits multiple acts of theft throughout the film, and at the very end, we could get him for indecent exposure, as he moons everyone, though mostly it's on accident.
And if I can't have your money,
I can still bag your bunny. Victor cares very little about the rules, especially about hunting, so it's no surprise he gets a pretty strong punishment. 5 years in prison with no chance at parole, as he does nothing but criminal activity throughout the movie. Probably one of the most memed on Dreamworks films outside of Shrek. Up next, we have the classic Over the Hedge. The first criminal we'll be tackling on this docket is Vincent. Vincent is a large bear that RJ works with during the beginning of the movie. He employs RJ to steal food and other such things for him, and this theft seems to have stemmed from things he did prior to employing the raccoon. When RJ doesn't get everything he was supposed to, Vincent immediately jumps to blackmail and death threats as he claims he will kill RJ. I will hunt you down and kill you if he doesn't get what he was supposed to. Vincent commits such immense psychological harassment and trauma to RJ that he appears to RJ in visions and dreams. He stalks RJ to the hedge and then actively slanders him to his new friends in such a way that it causes intense issues for him. Near the end of the film, he ends up attempting the mass murder of all the animals in the outdoor forest, including the murder of multiple children. Vincent is a massive beast that cares very little for anything beyond his own comfort and survival. Now, Vincent is an animal, and at the end of the film, he does get a good punishment. However, a better punishment in the environment that this movie takes place in would be life in an animal control facility. Ideally, one that's spacious and comfortable, due mainly to the severity of his multiple crimes. Moving on to the next criminal on our list is the original Karen, Gladys Sharp. Gladys is the president of the Homeowners Association and a general menace throughout the film, as she is arguably the main antagonist of the movie. She commits acts of assault and battery throughout her time on screen, as well as committing acts of conspiracy and attempted animal abuse. She commits massive acts of animal cruelty as she hunts down and attacks the many critters that live around her home, like when she tries to kill RJ and the gang. It's heavily implied that she abuses her presidential power and is probably on the line for corruption as well.
I don't care if this thing's against the Geneva Conventions. I want it!
She buys and owns the Depelter, which she is very aware is highly illegal to own, so she's on the line for owning illegal contraband. And when she's arrested, she immediately tries to resist and assault the officers, both of which are major crimes no matter how you slice it. She let her role in the neighborhood get to her head and thought she was above the law. But in our courtroom, she's not. So we sentence her to 5 years in prison with a chance at parole. Wrapping up Over the Hedge. Next, we have everyone's favorite villain from the movie, Dwayne the Verminator, the final antagonist of the film and a vermin exterminator, hence his very iconic name. Now, most of the stuff he does is part of his job, and they don't know how specifically human-esque the animals are. So one could argue that his animal cruelty, unlawful imprisonment, and attempted murder of these critters could all be washed away or knocked down a tad in court. This stems mostly from the fact that while he enjoys his job, he doesn't seem to do it just to harm the animals. Instead, he seems more content to capture and lock them away, instead of full-out killing them if possible. He doesn't seem interested in harming people either, as his anger and killer instinct seems to stem almost entirely towards animals. However, even discounting these crimes, he would still be on the line for conspiracy, specifically to do the other crimes we discussed, but also regarding the Depelter. He's also shown to be heavily corrupt and abusive of his power, as he is his own boss and doesn't care about who he harms with whatever he does. The Verminator, if you discount his first couple crimes, would get off quite easy. But because we all know at this point how conscious these animals are, we can't give him that luxury. So the Verminator would be stuck behind bars for the next 5 years, without parole. Finally, a movie that has seen a recent resurgence in popularity. We have the Dreamworks Aardman classic, Flushed Away. Starting off this section are none other than the Hench Rats, Blonde, Ladykiller, Fat Larry, and Thimble-Nosed Ted, and the Hench Frogs. We're putting them all together because they all do pretty much the same thing in the film. The Hench Rats and Frogs are a group of minions used by the Toad and Le Frog during the film where they're assumed to rough up citizens for taxes or other such things. They spend most of their time threatening those who need to be roughed up and aiding and abetting the crimes of those who manage to be higher up. None of them do anything particular of note beyond just being there to up the amount of hench people in any given shot. And due to just a severe lack of content with these characters, we're only going to give them 1 year in prison with a chance at parole. Next we have Whitey and Spike. Whitey and Spike are a duo of rats that work for the Toad. Spike is the cunning leader of the hench rats, and Whitey is the large albino-esque rat that serves mostly as muscle. While they don't seem to do much during the film, the two of them serve as the Toad's arm when hunting down Rita and then eventually Roddy.
I've got Rita, boss! I've got Rita!
The two of them are asked to hunt down Rita due to her stealing of a diamond, and they definitely stalk the poor woman as they constantly tail her throughout her time in the sewer. They then subsequently kidnap not only Rita, but also Roddy, and take them to the Toad where they continue to aid and abet the criminal leader, with little to no consequence. They're then sent chasing down the two where they continue to stalk what is essentially their prey. This eventually leads into a pretty obvious case of attempted murder when they try to freeze Rita and Roddy like they were originally ordered to by the Toad. This causes the two of them to slip and mess up, but it doesn't change the intention of murder the two had. Whitey and Spike are definitely less competent than the Toad would like, causing them to slip up. Whitey and Spike would serve 15 years in prison with no chance at parole, due mostly to that pesky attempted murder. When more competence and a bit more flair is needed, the Toad calls upon our next criminal, LaFrog. LaFrog is called into the film when Rita steals the master cable that the Toad needs for his master plan. LaFrog makes it very quickly to the top of our list, as he is very quickly an accessory to his cousin's attempted mass murder, and also an accessory to his attempted genocide of Retopolis, which we'll be talking a bit more about later.
Top floor, lingerie, housewares, and certain doom.
He stalks Rita, Roddy, and technically both Whitey and Spike when he tries to track down the master cable. After Whitey and Spike's successful capture, LaFrog then gets the master cable to the Toad before subsequently assaulting and attempting to murder Roddy on his cousin's orders. LaFrog has done a few heinous things in his time during the movie, but most of them were on orders, so he gets off just a little easy. But no matter how you slice it, what he did is monstrous, and he deserves a nasty punishment in return. So we sentence LaFrog to life in prison with no parole, as he just barely skates past execution. But real quick, before we get to our last entry, if you're enjoying the sentencing format, make sure to check out our cinema sentencing channel. We'll actually be sentencing characters from live-action movies and television series over there, and we'd love to have you go check it
subscribe.
out. Link below. The final criminal on our docket is none other than the Toad. The Toad is a lying aristocrat that partially runs the sewers, where he creates a massive plan to wipe out the rat population. He was once the pet of Prince Charles, and when he was flushed down the toilet in a whirlpool of despair, he ended up in the sewers. This of course led to his rise to power, which he instantly decided to abuse, ordering acts of kidnapping, abuse, and attempted murder whenever he deemed necessary, and planning what is at best a mass murder. He commits conspiracy to attempted genocide because of his plan to flood the entirety of the sewers and drown out Retopolis.
Let there be light!
He orders the attempted murder of Rita and Roddy simply due to Roddy's clumsiness, and tries to kill this man of supposed quality. The Toad seems to have also froze multiple other rats along the way, which is at best unlawful imprisonment. The Toad attempts his genocide and fails, but it doesn't change that his motives and intentions are horrible, and for that reason we sentence him to be publicly executed, likely by his very own liquid nitrogen. But let us know in the comment section if you agree with our sentencing, and tell us what we should cover.
Now that is what we call an execution, liquid nitrogen, and of course the Toad is the only villain of this video to be sentenced to death. I didn't think anyone's going to be sentenced to death in this video, but of course the last one gets sentenced to death. Alright, so that is the harshest punishment and most deserving, is sentencing Dreamworks villains for their crimes part 4. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like, share and subscribe if you haven't already, and go subscribe to Wickedbinge if you haven't already, and as always, until next time, peace out.